Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we discuss real, metaphysical, and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real and tangible change in your life. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about initiations, so stay tuned. Okay, so this week I want to touch on some questions I've been getting in my email a lot lately, and that's on initiations. Now, a lot of people are asking me, Drake, how do I get initiated into magic so I can begin practicing? Where can I get initiated? Do I have to be initiated? They keep telling me, they keep hearing you can only practice if you're initiated, or if someone who of a certain tradition or bloodline, or if you're born under a certain moon. Well, let's go ahead and simplify part of this real quick. You don't need to be initiated to practice magic at all, period. And the people who really want to push that, they're the ones that are trying to sell you something and just take your money. Okay? Let's be clear on that. When it comes to just magic, all initiations are personal, between you, the multiverse, and the entities you work with. Now, that said, if you wish to join a very specific tradition or practice, that tradition may require an initiation into it. Or, even if it's not a specific tradition, maybe it's just a coven and their personal tradition, they may still require an initiation before they teach you their individual practice or craft. That is totally within their rights to do, and if you don't want to be initiated into it, clearly that path, that group is not right for you. There is a lot of this. There are traditions and practices out there where this holds true. So if you were to actually want to practice Gardenarian Wicca, for example, that is an initiatory Wiccan practice in which you do need to be initiated into it. Or, at the very least, it was the last time I looked into it. And I have been made unaware of any changes of it since. But many of the older Wiccan traditions, they do require initiations into the tradition before you begin practicing it. Now, obviously, there's plenty of solitary traditions out there. And there's plenty of open covens where initiation is not necessarily required as well. Myself, I initiated into a few groups, but I'll be honest, I have nothing to do with those groups anymore. My focus stays solely on magic and magic alone. And like I said, you do not need initiation to practice magic. Now, again, a tradition like voodoo. Voodoo is a tradition that does require initiation. And if you cannot get initiated in it, please do not go tinkering with it. It's disrespectful. It really is, and it can get very dangerous. And I know there's a lot of people on here who's already gone down that road without initiation, and they're going to disagree with me. And for what it's worth, I hope it works out. Which, that does bring me to the question of people asking about self-initiation. What is this? Well, self-initiation is where you work with the multiverse. You're initiating yourself to a practice or to a path of your own making. And there's no guidelines for this, really. You can do this. In fact, most magic, I'd say even my path would probably fall under this, because I do just follow magic. I just practice magic. And it's a dedication to the work and yourself and to build yourself up. Now, the big caveat to this is, don't make an initiation where you're initiating yourself into the work and you're dedicating yourself to the work if you're not going to do the work. If you're just thinking about, dipping your toe in magic, trying it out, and maybe playing around with it here and there, don't do it. Don't do any initiations of any kind, because it is kind of going to create an energetic momentum for you, and it's going to start pushing you. But if you just sit down and don't do the work, that can actually end up backfiring on you. I've seen it happen to a lot of people. So make sure before you get in there and you start doing initiations or something, you're committed. You're going the distance. You're not going to just walk away from it. But self-initiation is a thing. You do hear more about these. And honestly, for most of my students that I work with, that's the path they take. All I do as a teacher is I teach them the framework, the nuts and bolts, the science of magic, how it functions, and their path is their own to carve out as they see fit. I do not initiate them into my path. Actually, if you have taken the Dragon Magic 101 course, for example, or even watched the Dragon Magic playlist, you'll see there's no official initiations in any of those. You can get into Dragon Magic pretty easy. You start doing the meditations, you start doing the rituals. There's no official initiation. The closest to an initiation Dragon Magic does is it has the steps of progression. And that is, of course, finding your guardian dragon, building that bond with that guardian dragon, and then finding your co-magician, building that bond with your co-magician, and then, of course, going out, meeting the rulers individually and building those bonds. That's not an initiation, that's building friendships. And honestly, if you ask my opinion, that's better than an initiation ever will be. But there is no traditional initiation in there. Some people have asked me, do I have to be initiated into a specific tradition or current to work with very specific entities? This one's hard because on the majority, I would say the answer is no. For example, you don't have to initiate into a Norse practice to work with Odin or Freya or some of the Norse deities, just as you wouldn't have to work in a Olympian or initiate into an Olympian practice to work with the Olympians or Celtic and so forth. However, interestingly enough, what I have noticed is the Loa and the Orisha from Voodoo. These entities do work different in ways. Now, what do I mean by different? Well, these entities, they prefer to work with the initiated. But, that said, if you do your research and really study, there are ways to interact and work with them one-on-one, not as a voodoo practitioner, just one-on-one relationship, but you have to do it correctly or it'll backfire on you. You cannot treat those entities the same as other deities. You cannot. And if you don't handle them correctly, it will backfire on you massively. And that's why the general rule for any voodoo deity, I think, that we see when people's talking about it is don't work with them at all unless you're initiated. That's just the safest way to go about it without it blowing up in your face. And generally speaking, that is what I would take a stance on. But there's a few of you who would probably flag me in the messages below if I didn't clarify that. So we're going to go ahead and clarify it. But my general rule of thumb is stay away from them without initiation. The other deities I've not noticed any issues with. Even the Egyptians, and they're very ceremonially very ceremonially focused. Apologies. It has been a long week here, and I'm stumbling a little bit on my words. But as a whole, when it comes to just magic, you don't need the initiations. The work you put into it, the time you put into it to build yourself, the work and path to self-mastery, that's your initiation. In fact, I heard one magician put it that every time a trial comes to you, every time a hardship comes to you, every time you hit a rough spot in your life and you overcome it, that is a magician's initiation, because they're constantly bettering themselves. They're constantly learning more to master themselves in their life and overcome anything that's thrown at them. So those events of life, those living life in that way, is the initiation. And he went on to say, a magician who hides behind closed doors and never experiences anything will never truly learn magic and will never truly be initiated through experience and application. And I found that to be an interesting comment. And I have thought on that much over the years. And I really like that. I really do. Because he is right. The biggest thing that will ever help you in your magical practice, it's when you fall down. It's those hardships. And what you do as a magician to take charge of your situation, to take charge of your life, to master yourself, and to overcome obstacles. Okay? So I hope that answers some of your questions on initiation. By and large, you all know I'm not a big proponent of it because of that. But I do hope this does answer some questions. And when it comes to just magic as a whole, and if you just want to practice magic, you don't need to initiate. But do respect any traditions that you want to go into. If the tradition itself requires initiation, if you truly want to be a part of that tradition, you have to follow their traditions. AKA, you're going to have to get initiated. And I will back a tradition who has that in their tradition all the way. Alright, I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.